I've seen companies who have bought 4 or 5 different solutions where the capabilities and the activities those solutions deliver for the business overlap quite significantly, and they probably could have got away with just 2 instead of 5.
Yeah, well, they would have loved that bottom line, eh? Well, hello, Ant.
G'day, Ryan.
Welcome to this week's instalment. Bit of a different one in the technological space, but the listeners may not know who you are. But firstly, how are you, Ant?
Oh, look, Ryan, very good. Thank you for having me, first of all. A little bit, if I start to slur my words, it's because I've been up since about 4 o'clock with a teething toddler. So a little bit sleep deprived, but I'm sure we'll do well through this.
Yeah, well, I barely struggle on 8 hours sleep. Can't imagine 4 a.m.
Oh,
Did you do your gym routine for 3 hours after that?
No, but I did do a little bit of strategic thinking for the business. So
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I heard you're on a lazy boy chair with your feet up. That sounds like a great strategic.
It's a great place to do it. It was too early for a coffee and too late for a whiskey, so I just got the tablet out and started doing some drawing that I needed to think about. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to our receptionist Fiona, and I was asking. She heard us talk about getting a kid to sleep, and I was saying I was hoping they worked that out by the time I had them. But she was saying couple of drops of brandy in their milk, their last thing of milk.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can get away with that at the moment.
Yeah. Jeez, times have changed, mate. Times have changed.
They certainly have, mate. They certainly have.
But on that note, bit of context about your background and how things have changed for you. How did it all start, Ant?
Yes, how did it all? That's a great question. Look, so technology. You mentioned that's what I'm here in to talk about, and that's what my background is. So I run a company called the IT Psychiatrist.
Great name. I'm sure everyone agrees.
There is one slight issue with the name, and I'll get to that in a moment. But no, it's I've been working in the technology field for about 20 years now. Some of that studying, so I started as a student, bachelor of IT, but then some of that in the corporate world. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I started seeing that where big businesses were getting a lot of value from people who were able to plan strategically and help the business shape up what it needed to do. Small businesses and small and medium as well, would have got the same value but couldn't have afforded the resource. So with the IT Psychiatrist, the model I've got is to go out there and work with companies, with business leaders, and help them firstly identify the problems I've got in their business, and then show them how technology can act as a solution to those problems. So I've been working in the IT Psychiatrist brand for about 2 years, and while it's a great name, while I love the name, it is quite difficult to spell. Psychiatrist.
Yeah, I've mucked it up a couple of times, actually. Good call.
I've still mucked it up a few times myself. So, it gets good name brand recognition, but it does have a challenge with the spelling. So
yeah, SEO. No, that's the point. I mean, I hear in marketing the final decision is made on search, so on Google. So if they're searching and they're coming up with an actual psychiatrist or stumbling to try and find you, they may give up.
Potentially. But I've got my SEO quite good, so I'm coming up quite high as well. So
all right. What sort of competitors are in your space, or what's your point of difference from there?
So I guess the competitors are in my space. There's not a lot of direct competitors doing the same work that I'm doing. There's a lot of people out there selling solutions, and that's probably the main point of difference for me. Is I don't have fixed solutions that I'm trying to sell. I have preferences towards some tools over others, but ultimately what I'm trying to do is find the right solutions for the client that I'm working with at the time. And if you talk, the one I like to compare is CRMs, or customer relationship management tools. And what's right for one company won't be perfect for every other company. And the story I've got with that was a few years ago now in a Facebook community group for small business owners. I saw the question come up from someone going, "Hey, look, I'm about to go out into self business, and I need to have a CRM." My business model, I'm a fitness instructor, and I'm going to be offering classes to bridesmaids, mother of the brides, to help lose weight. Great business model. And she said, "What's the best CRM?" And a whole bunch of people piled in and started recommending, the HubSpots and the common tools that are out there. And I got in early enough and went, "Well, hang on a minute. There's a field of CRMs dedicated specifically to the fitness industry. Allows you to put in health plans, fitness plans, diet trackers, all that stuff that your clients will need." So that's what you need to be looking at, not just what I use or what Jimmy down the road uses.
Makes sense. I mean, it's a similar crossover in our field is there's a lot of investment advisors that say put your money here, but they don't necessarily contextually understand the in-depth aspect.
Correct.
We're not very tech friendly here, but we did manage to get a CRM. You can critique us by all means. It's Salesforce pulled out a financial services thing, and Salesforce is on the higher end of the spectrum of price. But I guess the great thing with us is there's a point of difference between boutique firms and us, so we're able to reach that price point. And Salesforce innovates, but critique us and judge us. What would?
Well, look, it's funny you say that, because one of the views that I have, I try and focus on the people side of technology. So, like you say, you're not very tech friendly here, but do you need to be? Is probably the question that comes back.
Definitely need to be.
Or do you need to have every system under the sun doing everything? Or do you just have to know that, do people need to know how to use what they've got in front of them? And I think that often becomes a problem for many businesses, is that often the people don't know how to use the tools around them.
True.
Or they may not have been configured correctly, or the person who sold it to them, the sales team who sold it to them, haven't understood what problems they're solving. And that's, talking point of difference, that's one thing that I try and focus on with my clients is not saying, hey, there's a solution for that, or there's an app for that, we'll put that in and you'll be right. But it's actually going, is the problem that your people don't know what they're it's not that they don't know what they're doing, is that your people aren't familiar enough with the system, and will training help, or do we need to upskill them in some regard, or could it be the processes within the business as well that's holding them back? So what I'm not looking to do is put a technology solution in to fix everything, because sometimes that's just it's just like adding another coat of paint over the top of 15 other coats of paint already. So
it's good call. Yeah, I mean, we're actually in that situation now where I have to turn into a developer and administrator of Salesforce. So yeah, and as you say, it's not so much the people aren't good enough. It's just, one, obviously change is a very hard thing to implement. Two, the more barriers you have to that change, well, it's even harder to implement that, as you say, 15 coats. So yeah, I see what you mean. So let's say, okay, you're a small business owner, or your ideal clientele are probably 10 employees plus in terms of implementation?
Yeah, 10 or more.
Okay.
I will work with some of the smaller, less than 10 as well, and I'm currently working on a model for solopreneurs, so people who are in business for themselves and only them. But yeah, 10 or more, because they tend to have a little bit more complexity that they need to deal with. So,
well, they definitely need it. I mean, I understand the huge benefit of technology. One, it keeps you lean, it's efficient, and instead of it being people dependent, it's actually similar to a franchise where it's systems, so you can execute the same level of customer service every time. So I see the benefit. So let's say either the listeners are part of a larger organization like that, or they're running it themselves. You come in, what happens? Ant walks in the door.
Yeah, walk in the door, and the first part of the engagement for me is finding out those problems. So, not assuming that again, not assuming that technology is going to fix the issues they've got, but just looking for what the problems are in the business and where it's coming from. It could be processes take a lot longer than they should to complete. So whether it's fulfilling customer requests or providing service, it could be that things just aren't working. I've got one client that I'm working with at the moment where they're just, because they were two companies that merged together, they've got two different tech stacks that they need to start to unpick and bundle together. So working with them around how to make sure that that's done as seamlessly and efficiently as possible. So working through those problems, working with the leadership team, whether that be the owner or a business manager, or if it's big enough with the C-suite, the chief executive and below, working with them to actually just say, look, what are we trying to fix here? Where are the issues? And then taking that back into the staff as well, and working really closely with the people around to actually make sure that the problems that are perceived to be there are actually the ones that are really critical to them as well.
Okay, so I guess that's your skill set, a combination of the contextual understanding of technology, but then also the implementation side with the people.
Correct.
So what would be common mistakes or misuses of technology that you see? So I think the most common mistake I see is that
people or the business hasn't necessarily gone through the process of actually understanding what they need. They've bought a tool based on a range of factors, and never for the wrong reasons. They're always buying them for the right reasons, and it's to drive their business forward. But they may not have chosen the right tool, or they may not have implemented it correctly, or they may not be using it to the best of their ability. So therefore, it's just holding them back a little bit. And I've seen companies who have bought 4 or 5 different solutions, where the capabilities and the activities those solutions deliver for the business overlap quite significantly, and they probably could have got away with just 2 instead of 5.
Yeah, well, they would have loved that bottom line, eh?
Yep.
So it's I guess the simplistic way to explain is they the what and how. They're good at that, but they lose the why.
Correct. Yep.
So let's say someone's trying to be a self-starter and they like your Ant, but maybe they don't want to go see Ant. How would they go about finding their why?
So, I mean, we could send them to Simon Sinek's TED Talk on Start With Why.
Is it good? I'll rate it.
Is a good one to go with. But obviously, Start With Why, I mean, there's a lot of things in there, but it's what's their strategy? What are they trying to deliver? What's the vision that they have for their business? Where's their business plan taking them as well? And why is that happening? And that could be someone starting out, someone well evolved. If you, as a financial services company, decided you want to offer only robo-advice and digital services to your clients, what does that look like to you, and why are you offering that? What are the challenges? So that's where I'd be working with them to look at. And same with the startups. What are they trying to do, and what are they trying to bring to the market?
Okay, interesting. Well, we've got a varied bunch of listeners. There's a significant amount of tradies, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And you're working on that solo sort of side of things. So it sounds like it's taking the time to understand the vision, the business plan, and trying to execute.
Correct.
So what are common needs, or do you see trends? So obviously it's tailored to each organization, but are there certain trends or common problems that technology can fix, but they're not utilizing?
So I think, it's a great question. There's some trends that I'm seeing with businesses around technology in general, and I can jump to those in a moment, but the trends that technology could be fixing probably comes into automation, and the high volume, low value transactional nature of some of the jobs. So you think about tradies, for example, and I'll pick on one particular flavour of a tradie, maybe someone who runs a carpet cleaning company. Historically, 10 years ago, their natural model would have been if they were getting a job, they'd get called out, they'd come on site, they'd probably do a measure and quote, figure out how much it's going to cost, quote the customer on that. In this day and age, with the amount of information we've got online, there's nothing stopping carpet cleaners from actually doing that all digitally. So having a form on their website or through that's searchable online, that a customer can jump in and say, hey, I need my house cleaned. Carpet's, 20 years old. We've got 90 square metres or 150 square metres of floor space. Carpet's this style, or whatever. And have an automatic quote generated. And then they could say, yep, want to go with that. Could tap into the tradie's calendar, and it could be, say, I'm in Te Atatu. The tradie could be saying, right, great, Te Atatu, 4 hours blocked out for that kind of job. We can be there next Wednesday. And suddenly everything's been automated, and that tradie's not having to be on the phone and spending a lot of time going to site back and forth all the time.
That makes sense. All right, so that's one area of automation. What would be some other key automation areas to focus on at a quick start?
Yeah, so I think, sticking with that same one, and this is where Xero, a tool like a Xero or the more modern MYOB comes in, is the whole quote to invoice process. So once you've quoted and once you've completed the work, you should be able to hit the button, generate an invoice, and send it straight to the customer. If that's your payment model.
Okay.
If your payment model is more cash on delivery, you can do it differently as well. So that's one. But for more mid-sized firms, companies that have got a few people on board, and I'm sort of thinking into the 20 or 30 plus space here, and as they're growing, you could start to automate the setup of new staff. You could start to automate the way forms are being flowing through the business as well.
So do you suggest that for the larger organisations because they have that problem of wanting staff, or the fact they have scale to justify the cost?
They have scale to justify the cost. So
okay.
if they were in a massive growth mode,
Yeah.
and they were looking to really uplift their HR systems, then definitely I'd recommend that. If they were just 30 people and they were only ever going to be 30 people, then we wouldn't go down that path. We'd look for other opportunities where technology can add value to them, or where their current environment could be evolved to get more value out as well.
Okay. All right. Well, here's a out there question: if you had unlimited money and you could make the perfect organisation based on the technological know-how that you have, what systems would you execute in that?
Good question.
I'm springing you on this, mate, especially with your lack of sleep. You're doing
Great
well.
question. Look, perfect organisation. I think everyone would have. I'll use some big high-level terms: portability and flexibility. So what I'm meaning there is every system that I had would be cloud-based or accessible over the internet. It doesn't have to be cloud-based.
Okay.
But one of the core principles of cloud is it's accessible over the internet. So, yeah, they'd be able to do their job from anywhere in the world, and ideally on any device as well. So whether it be a laptop, a cell phone, a tablet, doesn't matter. But they've got access to the systems that they need to do the job they need. So that'd be the first principle that I'd be going for. Second one is maintaining data as an asset to the business. So instead of having piles of data and information all over the place and stored in different systems, I'd have one single data repository that everything else is consuming from and using as a single source of truth.
Wow.
A number of reasons for that. One, you don't end up with the challenges of having too much data, and I know plenty of the older organisations around have got this, where they can't keep track of their customer because they're in so many different systems.
Yeah.
But secondly, it's easier to secure. We've seen examples over the last couple of weeks where information from the levels of government that we've seen it at has just been leaked out into the public sphere, or in the case of the police have been hacked. The more you centralise your data into one place, the more secure you are as a business.
Interesting. Is that because you can put more time into the security for that, or is it the less things that could go wrong? Or
it's just that there's one thing to secure. So it's like if you think of if your house only had one door and no windows, yeah, it'd be a horrible place to live. But securing it's going to be easy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You think of it like that. The more rooms, the more windows, the more doors you've got into your house, the harder it is to secure. And even if you were an alarm technician and you were quoting on a job with a house that only had one door, all you have to do is put a sensor around that door and you're done. But if you've got, like, if we use our house, for example, we've got 3 doors that you can come and go from. We've got, I think, 15 windows.
Don't go too descriptive. Don't even say the area, man.
No, I won't say the area. I think we've got 15 windows, and I only know that because we replaced them a few years ago. So 15 windows that we'd have to secure.
I would never known that answer. All right.
That we'd have to secure at every level, of whether an alarm or a proper lock or whatever. So it's the same with data. The more databases you've got, if you've got a CRM where you're storing customer data, and then you've got SharePoint where you're storing customer files that has customer information, and then you've got another system that information again is existing in, that's 3 points that you've got to secure. So
makes sense. So if people are aware of that, what's stopping them from consolidating? Is there not a program, or is it the time it takes to transfer the systems?
I think it's the time and the knowledge more than anything.
Okay.
I ran a survey through Facebook and LinkedIn over the last week, and the results that came back, the question I had was, what's the biggest challenge you've got in your business? And
good question.
What I was expecting to see was the usual chestnut that comes out of, it's too expensive. But what it's too expensive was, I think 2 or 3 people answered. 7% of the responses were that. But the big ones were not knowing who to trust to deliver what I need.
Sure, yeah.
Not knowing what I need. And it's not working. It always breaks down. Now, those first 2, I think, not knowing what I need and not knowing who to trust are pretty linked together, and
probably causes a third too.
Yeah, I think it does, because they don't know what they need, and because they either go out and try and get a deal or a bargain from someone. It may not be configured right. So I think you're right. They're interlinked.
Yeah, right. Greg calls it making the invisible visible.
Correct.
So, all right, you've got all this data. It's all consolidated. What are the capabilities with data? Why are people comparing it to the new crude oil?
Just because there's so much potential in the information. You know, if you think, and we've talked about this with Greg as well, if you think of a bank, assuming that someone has a relationship with a bank from the day they're born, the bank can use key data points to actually map out the journey of what that customer is going to do, you know, and interact with them in a certain way as they hit different milestones. So for the first 13 or 14, 15 years of their life, the bank relationship with that customer might be very hands-off and maybe just helping them safeguard their money. But as they hit to about 15, one of the first people in the world to know that you've got a job is going to be your bank, because you'll get a regular fixed income coming in. And that's how they could be communicating and saying, hey, look, you know, we see you've got a job. We see you making money. What's your plans? What's your goals? How do you want to structure this? So you've got a little bit to put away for that first car, or for I don't know, maybe the summer holidays between school or whatever. And then as they turn 17, the bank could start to ask the question of, well, where do you plan to go after school? What are you planning to do? You're off to university? Great. You're off to a trade? Great. What's your goal beyond that? What's that life goal look like? And then as you age with the bank can still keep having those conversations. You know, you're going to get to a certain point where a house ownership might be on the cards. The bank should be preempting that. Today, the banks have all this information, but they don't. They would like to be able to do that with it, but the problem they've got is that the information is just all over the place. So and it's not consolidated into a central view.
Man, you're inspiring me to want to do this, because I mean, I'm sort of a big picture guy and the details go off.
Yeah.
But I do see the massive potential. Like the more you can automate your business, the more lean you can make it. Then on top of that, the more consistent your customer service. But the final piece is how personalized you can make that journey.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's where data becomes that oil that you're talking about, is it allows you to personalize things. And if you think of that bank example, none of those milestones need someone watching the customer throughout to actually trigger any point. It can just be triggered based on, or the process can kick off based on certain triggers. So that fortnightly income going into the bank is a fairly good assumption that there is a job. So you can start to send out the marketing material, update your CRM, so that if the customer does get in touch with you, you can have the conversation with them. Because the last thing you want to have is that breakdown of, you send out a lot of marketing, someone engages, rings up the call centre, and the call centre's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the same could be done for tradies. And if we come back to that carpet cleaning example as a business, or actually a different one, we had a little bit of a cockroach problem just because the neighbourhood we're in, a little bit damp, a lot of wood around us, so a cockroach problem at the start of the year. And we had a guy come in, sprayed the walls, baited and everything. Great, did a great job. And he said, look, this should last you for about 6 months. There's an opportunity there to be talking to him and actually having him have an automated follow-up with us in 6 months. Because what he's trusting is that we'll remember who he was, and that what a great job he did, because he did a fantastic job, but us remembering that in 6 months. And he could be following up. You know, he did it in February, get to September, we could just get either a call or an email or a letter in the box saying, hey, do you want to book another time? And then again, could automate that to the point where, do you want to book it another time? He's got our details. He knows how much it cost him last time. We should be able to just push a button and say, yeah, we'll see you Friday. And he shows up, does the work, and then the invoice arrives. You know?
God, you think if you have a certain level of resource and smart people in your organisation, you would allow that. But I found, I used to be a garbage runner back in the day, and even they'd spend thousands of dollars every week to try and fix the truck instead of buying a new one. They were very transactionally focused.
Yeah.
Imagine because there's a board and blah, 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 and they got to tick. But I think they lose opportunity there. Like, so obviously in our organization, I'm limited by time and expertise, and I have to be very selective of what I focus on. But the potential, because I have this vision of, so we've got a CRM, we intimately know someone into the, like, we know all the kids' date of birth, their ages, everything that's gone on in their life. And then their caller ID comes up. So we get reminded, we check the CRM to remind us what's going on.
Yep.
We know exactly what's happening. So we can tell them as soon as they answer, you're like, oh, hey, is this Ant? Oh, and I suspect you're calling about your draw request. It's at this stage, just so you know. And then you could even have the coffee, your favorite coffee when they come in. You could even potentially automate the process of finding a great present tailored to them based on the data that you mine, and then do a handwritten note and then deliver it.
Correct. Absolutely. And if you're into client entertainment in some way or gifts, you can use that to their advantage as well. If you know you've got a client who likes sport, or and you're able to afford to do this, then why not buy? If you've got the capital behind you, why not invest in a box at Eden Park? And you can invite those clients along. But equally, if the clientele that you're dealing with prefer fashion or prefer the movies or prefer something else, then you can start to offer personalised gifts, because not everyone likes sport.
No.
And maybe it's a box of wine and a bottle of wine and a box of chocolates that'll.
Yeah, Greg learned the hard way. So he's got a strategy. Well, he works on this 90-day cycle. You've got to get in contact with your client quite a few times in that 90-day period, and we have a few client functions. But one of the things that he was doing was initially giving out a nice bottle of alcohol that he could hand deliver, but then he found out certain people didn't drink, blah, blah, blah. So now there's Christmas cakes, and hand delivers those every year for Christmas. Yep. But you just think how personalised that could be when the gifts are decided for you. They're still relatively smart on a cost basis, because you could have something that does that.
Correct.
And the opportunities would all be there.
Correct. And that's there's some interesting things in there. I had a manager once who didn't celebrate Christmas, just because of cultural and religious beliefs, and there's plenty of people out there who don't. So.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to that. I mean, the level which you could go. Is there certain programs that you feel comfortable that you use? But then once again, that's the same problem. You're doing the what and the how. Yeah.
So and look, it comes to with the what and the how. There's many ways to skin a cat at the end of the day. So CRM, you talked about Salesforce. I mean, Salesforce, HubSpot, Mondays, Nimble, Pipedrive. I could keep running that one all day. It doesn't resonate with people though.
True.
It's what are you trying to do? For some people, Salesforce will be suitable. And I remember having a conversation with someone early on where his CRM was still done in Excel. But he had a very clear process that he followed, where that information was every piece of information was looked at weekly, and everything was updated every time there was a need to. So he had the strategy in place to deal with it, and it was like, cool. There's no point in trying to push you into something you have to pay for if what you've got's good enough. And that's for me is why are we changing? Why is the problem here? Because if the problem is the people, or if the problem is the processes you've got around it, then the why is quite clear, and the what and the how is less of a challenge for you.
Yeah, so that's the tricky thing. I mean, this could lead to a huge increase in sale intake for you on top of what you're already doing. But there's also the people that, so it's quite hard to take a tangible idea from this. So I understand the automation. It's like, okay, it makes sense. I can understand the need for the why. Is there a way to find a process to not make those mistakes in an organization? And
definitely.
Is there a framework?
There's a framework that I've been working on, and it needs a much better title, because the title I'm working with at the moment means something to people in technology as an industry. Doesn't mean anything to the audience, but I'll use it anyway. Enterprise Architecture for SME, EA for SME, and the framework there, the EA framework, Enterprise Architecture Framework, is just a way of aligning technology strategies with business outcomes. So aligning what you need with where you want to go. Like I say, it needs a better name so that it resonates better, but the idea through that framework is to work with companies to not necessarily do it for them, but to show them how to, so when they do have a need later on, they've actually got the skills internally to focus on the why, and to then map the what and the how back to the why. And the who as well. So that's one thing that can be done. And I think the fundamental question, and what I've been talking about a lot lately, is within identifying problems, is just, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? What are the problems that truly need solving? and how do we evolve and adapt? The quote that I came across earlier this week was a quote from the Blockbuster CEO in 2008. For everyone that's familiar with the Blockbuster story and how Netflix disrupted them, there's a lot more to it than just that. But in 2008, Netflix had started to offer streaming as a service. Blockbuster had gone onto the online channel and then pulled away a bit, and was starting to lose their market share significantly. But the CEO at the time said, we don't see Netflix as a competitor, we see Walmart and Apple as our biggest competitors. So he was seeing physical retail of DVDs as being the biggest challenge. And within 2 years, he was gone. The business was bankrupt. And Netflix is now a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so that's something I think with companies is what are the problems out there and what do they need to focus on? And how do they make sure they don't disrupt themselves too much, but also don't let someone disrupt them.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing with corporates. I mean, they get so rigid and they lack agility. Like, I mean, even the guy on that Walmart, Sam Walton, he started it, one of the richest men in America, and he was arrested in Brazil for measuring the aisles in a supermarket. So they didn't know he was a billionaire, and what he was doing, he's like trying to find out, are they doing something that I'm not? Is there a way for an organization at that scale to still remain agile, or a process to perceive change and that sort of thing?
Oh, look, definitely. There definitely is, and that's where that enterprise architecture function comes in. It's what I was talking about, why I went into the business model I've got, is that as long as they're looking outside and keeping an eye on the advancements in technology and what the customer wants. If you take it back to Blockbuster and Netflix, one of the things the customer wanted was just to be able to watch a movie where they wanted, when they wanted. And that's what Netflix offered with streaming. Hey, you can watch this anywhere in the world at any time, as long as you've got an internet connection. Whereas Blockbuster well, you can watch what you want as long as we've got it in store, and if you forget to return it, we'll charge you a late fee.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, and same for the supermarkets, same for the warehouse, the Walmarts of the world of what's the customer want. A quote that I've used before is that no matter how good your boat is, with the likes of Team New Zealand, they've got a rocket ship, they got a something that's cruising at about 30 knots, I think. They still have to look outside to see what's going on.
True.
They can't just stick their head down and hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good analogy and a way to see things with an organisation is the customer's always right, but the challenge when an organisation tries to innovate in that space is they try and think what another person feels and execute on that. Yeah. So do you think there's a certain level of test and measure? So you're putting client as your focus, you're talking to them on the surveys, you're giving them what they want, but they could actually be... I'm getting lost my words.
Well, no, I think I know.
You'll pull it together.
I think I know where you're going with that. And if you look at one of the biggest frustrations with companies like Vodafone, Telecom, Chorus when they're doing work around a house, is they sit there and say, we'll have a technician on site between 9 and 12. Now, I don't want to sit around for 3 hours waiting for a technician. I kind of want to know that he's going to be there at 9:30. And that's what the customer's wanting to see now is give me certainty. Don't give me a range. Don't tell me they're going to be there from 9 till 12 and then they don't show up till 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Tell me they're going to be there at 9:30.
Yeah.
And have them there at 9:30. I remember talking to an electrician about this a few years ago. We had some work done on the lights at our house, and he was a sparky in Auckland, and he was doing a lot of Auckland, and once he'd finished our job, he was off to buy himself a motorbike, because what he'd figured was that he could spend an hour in the morning just going around and quoting all the different houses that he was going to be working on his motorbike, then head back home, jump in the van, and start the day's work for the day. Whereas if he was trying to get to all those houses in the van, he was stuck in traffic and he couldn't move as nimbly, he couldn't be as agile. So for him, the technology change for him was motorbike and van. That was it. It was as simple as that, because he'd figured out how to get to more customers quicker.
Yeah, right. See, I don't know, when I asked you to come on the podcast, I thought you might just go, oh yeah, tech is the way. You got to bring in all these fancy gizmos, but you're more on the practical side. If it works, it works.
If it's good enough, it's good enough, right?
Yeah.
As long as and that's again comes back to the what and the how. As long as you know the why. As long as you know why it's working for you. Had the Sparky decided that he was just going to get rid of his van and go to every job on the back of his motorbike, I'd say he was barking up the wrong tree, because imagine taking all your tools and your kit.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I was like, well, it's a quote, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just simply to quote while his van was still, and again, you think about companies that have a lot of not remote, but field workers, where they're off doing assessments, whether it be a property inspector or a surveyor for a quantity surveyor. Could be out there with just a tablet where they're punching in all the numbers they need to, and that could connect back to that central data hub that I talked about. And then they go back to the office at the end of the day, or maybe at 2 o'clock in the afternoon they're back to the office and they're typing up their reports, but they're not having to transfer everything back and forward. And the tablet's not the constraint, because you wouldn't want to write a report on a tablet. No. But they're not lugging a big heavy laptop, which they have to carry a charge around for as well. So
yeah, massive. I mean, you could even have like certain steps on this tablet that give an indicator to poor people like yourself on how far along they are at the job, the location linked to and then it sends it off to. I just get so excited. I don't like necessarily using tech all the time, but I like the idea of the end outcome that it provides.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exciting stuff, mate. It's exciting stuff.
It certainly is.
What would be your why? Why are you? I understand the practical sense, but why is Ant doing what he's doing?
Why am I doing it? Because I like solving problems, ultimately, and I like helping other people solve problems as well. Because at the end of the day, that's what most businesses are there for, is to help customers solve problems.
It's true. I always I like the quote, because people sort of like, oh yeah, I want all more money and all this sort of thing, but I mean, the money you earn is relative to the problem you solve.
100%.
So how big a problem do you want? You might love it, but other people will be like, So what's the vision then? So we've got this IT psychiatrist with great SEO but hard to spell. What's the long-term vision of what's potentially possible with what you're doing?
Yeah, so look, the long-term vision, I guess, is building, instilling that level of knowledge into people where they can actually, we answer those two questions we talked about before. They know who to trust, and they know what the potential of technology in their business is. And once those two questions are answered, once we can say, anyone can say hand on heart, I know why I've got this system and I know what it does for me, and I know how it does it, then I'll consider that job done. But equally, instead of the I don't know who to call or I don't know what to do, if they're sitting there going, yeah, I know I know that when I ring my IT provider and I ask him a question and the answer I get is going to be just what I need, I've got that trust as well. So it's just about raising that level of knowledge up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. Same similar reflection in the financial space. I want to improve the collective financial know-how of all of New Zealand so they stop making dumb decisions. If that means I lose a job, then whatever.
Yeah, exactly. If I turn around and no one needs an IT psychiatrist in 10 years because I've done a great job at just lifting that level of trust up and the level of understanding what can be done, then I'll go do something else quite happily.
Yeah, that's a good legacy there. I imagine you'll be a very wealthy man if you helped execute the national world. All right, well, as a closing remark for the business owners that recognize their problem, but there's something holding them back from taking that next step and reaching out to someone, what would you say to them?
Look, I'd say one of the services I offer is just a free conversation with business owners, just to work through whether there are problems. So I know that when you start saying consultant in front of some people, that they hear dollar signs, and that's not my model. My model's not there to take those traditional consultancy high value long term things, but just to sit down and have that first chat and see if there's something to work on and give some takeaways. So anyone who's listening to this who wants to just have a chat about the potential in their business, then feel free to give me a call or jump on my website, www.theitpsychiatrist.co.nz. And there's a contact me booking form there, so just book something in and we'll come on out. And if there is a chance that I can help you, then we'll have that conversation on what that looks like after the fact. But have that free conversation first and just see what it's doing.
Sure, and everyone that's been listening, this isn't an infomercial or anything like that. It's really just people that I've come across the networking that I feel could add collective value to the listeners, and have quite a unique insight. And I invite on. And for those of you that don't know how to spell psychiatrist like me, there'll be a link in the bio, so click that. And well, thanks for coming in, and I hope you had a good time and it was interesting.
Oh, it was a great chat. Thanks for having me, Ryan. It was I recorded my own podcast session this morning, so it's good to be interviewed rather than interview.
Yeah, you get to talk more, mate. It's a liberation.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thanks to NZ Audio Editors and Jordan Greville. And anyone that has questions, whether it's business, maybe I can ask the next guest that, or it's in the financial space, just hit me up at ryan@oneplan.co.nz. Till next time.
Thank you, Ryan.